There we go. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Where are you located?
Stevens Point.
Okay, that's right. You're super close to me. Yay.
Mhm.
I forget how close people are. I love all of the stuff behind you. Did you redo
Oh,
your office?
no.
I
When
don't
we
remember. When
spoke,
we talked before, you must have been in a different location.
I was in my dining room.
Oh, super
Mhm.
fun. I love it.
Yeah.
I like being able to see interesting things.
Ah,
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a little bit of backstory about you before we start talking,
okay.
and then we'll just away we go. Okay,
Yay. Sounds
so
good.
hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Paula Houlihan. She is a women's success mentor, award-winning speaker, and author. Paula empowers women around the world to create success on your terms and to live life of purpose, passion, and pleasure. She knows that when you follow your bliss, magic happens. I love that.
Mhm.
Paula teaches her clients how to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary and includes your life, your business, and your relationship with money. A firm believer in abundance, she generously shares her tips, resources, and teachings, all while traveling, which is one of her passions, and working out from her home office in central Wisconsin, nestled in 40 acres of enchanted woodlands. That's awesome. As excited as she is being a transformational muse, inspiring and empowering her clients, her most precious gems are her crown of achievements are her charming husband, 7 beautiful children, 2 giggling grandsons, and precious baby granddaughter. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cute. Paula lives her bliss with no apologies, knowing the key to real and lasting success is simply being your brilliant self. Paula is a certified life coach and founder of Paula Houlihan International LLC, Sexy Hot Success and paulahoulihan.com. Paula, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for everyone to get to know you more and hear more about what you bring to the world. And I love that you live on 40 acres. That's amazing.
I am so happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation today, Rebecca. Yeah, I love my acreage. It's just fun to walk through it. It's fun to just be nestled in, somewhat seclusion, get away from it all from time to time.
Yeah. Do you unplug from like technology and social media and stuff quite often to just
Yes, I do. On the weekends, I'm a firm believer that we need to unplug. I think we're plugged in way too much. And when we are, we can get easily distracted and we can forget about what's important to us and we can be influenced by outside, sources instead of
oh,
connecting within. So yes, unplugging is a big part of what I teach too. Not that
oh
we're
good.
completely unplugged, but there are times and places, right?
Yeah, exactly. I believe that too. And I'm guilty. I'm one of those people that I know that I'm addicted to my phone and picking it up out of just sheer routine of just picking it
Habit.
up to check it, that
Yep.
habit. It
Yeah.
just kind of gets away from us and we lose time so fast that way. So that's awesome that that's something that you teach. I didn't actually know that. So that's fun. Um, Awesome. So that is really interesting, but I would love for you to tell us something that you want to share that's interesting about your life. I like starting out with something more relatable about you. So whatever you would like to share about yourself to give people a little more inside story about you.
Hmm. That's interesting. That question, when we're faced with it, always brings up butterflies, right? Because there's just so many things to talk about. What do you pick? And are
Yeah.
they going to judge me? And all that stuff that goes through our heads, right?
Yeah.
So mainly, I haven't always been where I am right now. Life hasn't always been following my bliss. And I think because of what I've been through, that's what's led me to the coaching that I do. So sharing a little bit about that. I'm in my third marriage. When I met my husband, it was the mindset of 3 strikes, I'm out, or third time's the charm. I'll see which way it goes, right? My first marriage, we just had different goals and different ideas of what we wanted in our lives, and we, separated amicably, as amicably as a married couple can divorce. My second marriage was quite the opposite. My second marriage was actually very abusive. And having survived that, I realized that we have these ideas about what those types of women are, right? I was guilty of it. It seemed ridiculous to me that anyone would be in an abusive relationship until I found myself in one. And it's very interesting how we get caught up in that without even knowing it until suddenly we don't know how we got there, and we certainly don't know how to get out of it. Yeah. That's when I realized that I was needing to be more aware of the choices I was making. Couple that with, I was also working in corporate. I was a senior claims specialist, so I handled high cases, litigated, multi-million-dollar, serious type cases, and I ended up with adrenal fatigue. So what I realized was, through that abusive marriage and through the high pressure, stressful workload that I had, I was working anywhere from 50 to 60 hours a week on average, with a lot of pressure and lots of demands, even though I was very good at the job and I loved it. With that diagnosis of adrenal fatigue and having survived the abuse, I realized that the choices I was making were literally killing me.
Yeah.
I had stage 4 adrenal fatigue. Just to sit up in a chair like this was exhausting.
Wow.
By the time I finally went in and got that diagnosis. And it was then that I decided that I had to start making some different choices. And that's what brought me back to school. That's what got me to finish up my psychology degree that I had started over a decade before that. And it's what introduced me. I'm sorry?
It's never too late.
It's never too late. And that's what introduced me to Intrinsic Coaching. And it was just like an aha moment. I loved it. I loved the way that coaching helps us look within for the answers that we're searching for outside of ourselves. And what I discovered was a lot of my choices, and this is common with a lot of my clients too, a lot of the choices we make are based on what we are hoping what's outside of us can give us. The feeling of value, the feeling of being loved, the feeling of having purpose, right? And because I lived through the extremes of discovering what that pursuit brings, that's what feeds what I coach now. And that's the support. I don't ever want anyone to ever live a life that isn't truly aligned with what they want. Life is short. We need to live it. We need to enjoy it. And too often we're doing, like we said, the habits of always being online or always looking to our phone or connecting with the TV, or the habits of our daily life, right? The busyness of life. And we forget to live.
Yeah. I think that people we kind of talk about being busy. That's just really something that people say, right? How was your day? Oh, busy. How was your weekend? Oh, busy. And we kind of wear busyness as a badge of honor. If you're not saying you're busy, then you're lazy or not doing enough, when in reality, everyone is wearing so many different hats and being thrown so many different things in our everyday life that, how can we not be busy? It's just really what you stack and put priority to, and finding your purpose in your daily life, like we're talking about, which is such a great point. So I love that we just dove into that a little bit. So let's talk specifically about fear, and tell us more about a significant time that you want to talk about when fear did hold you back from living your life fully. Which point in your story do you want to talk about with fear?
That's a profound question. And we all face fears, even today, we still face fears. Right. The difference for me, though, I think, is that now I know that fear just keeps me where I am, and moving through it and getting on the other side of it is what lets me get to where I want to be or live the life that I want to live. So walking away from my corporate job, a lot of fear around that. I was making a very good income. Like you said, busyness, we wear that like a badge of honor. Another thing we wear like a badge of honor, I know I did, stress.
Yeah.
Ironically.
They go together, right? Like if you're not busy or not stressed, then you're just not doing enough.
Yeah, you're not working hard enough, or you're not enough, basically. The stress was like, ironically, the stress was what was killing me, literally, resulting in adrenal fatigue. But the stress is what I used as a gauge to value, okay, how much responsibility have I been given, right? How much value has been placed on me to get the job done? Mm-hmm. And having to let that go was really scary. Like, how do I define myself? How do I know where my place is? How do I even gauge that I've been productive? How do I value myself? How do I even know if I'm worth anything at this point? And then to walk away from that income, then the fears around, what's that going to do to my family? You know, how is that going to affect us financially? Am I going to be able to bounce back from this? And then I had the whole fear of my health issues to begin with too, which is really what pushed me to rethink how I was spending my time. And I left corporate because I knew that I didn't want to go back to that work anymore. I knew that I had reached a closure around that type of work. And I knew that I wanted something more. And the illness is what pushed me forward. Like I had no choice. I either needed to take a leave of absence or walk away. And I chose to walk away because I wanted to do it differently going forward. Yeah. And that was scary.
Yeah. And it seems like that's what it takes, you know, these days, because we are so busy and we have so many things. And like you said, you had a good income from what you were doing. So unless something drastic happens, there has to be a tipping point where people are like, enough is enough, whether that is medical. I feel like medical is really what people, that has to be a lot of it, or breakage of a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. It has to be something really altering to really shift from those mindsets these days, because we get it so engraved in us that it just ends up being those habits and the things that we just do because that's how we're surviving. And that's really what it is. We're just surviving and we're not thriving in our lives and living our purpose. So, I mean, that it totally makes sense. So what was holding you back mentally? Like, where were you mentally during that time? Obviously your health was the tipping point for you, but where were you mentally when the fear was holding you back from leaving the job, right? And how did you feel about yourself during that time?
Mm. So before I answer that question, I want to reiterate a really valid point that you just made. Yeah. The habits that we get into, right? And the fact that oftentimes it takes this crisis, this tipping point for us to really to step back and take a look at our life and make the changes, if we're going to make the changes, right? That phrase of hitting rock bottom. Yeah. The reason that works is because our brains are designed to maintain equilibrium. They're designed to keep us safe, and they're designed to protect us, right? And that's where habits come in. And the ironic thing about this is even the bad things in our life, like when I was in an abusive relationship, even that became my normal.
Sure.
Right? Now when I look back, I think, how the heck did I get through that, right? But at the time, it seemed like normal.
Yeah, you were in it, right? You were in the moment. Like, we don't know what we know until we know it. Exactly.
And when something feels normal, whether it's horrible or wonderful, if it feels normal to us, it takes a lot to shift us to make a change, because we don't like to change. Change means the unknown, and change triggers that fear, right? And the consistency of normal, no matter how good, bad, or indifferent normal is for you, it's really hard to get out of the habits that perpetuate that normal, right? And so what was going through my mind was, I had no idea when I walked away from this job, I had no idea how I was going to bring that income back into my family's life again. I mean, it was not quite half the income we were making. My husband makes really good money too, but it was close.
Yeah.
And the benefits I walked away from, right? Because as a mom, I'm thinking of my kids, right? And as a woman, I'm thinking about, and like I shared a little bit earlier, how do I define myself then? Who am I? And the big thing for me is admitting that I needed to take a break.
Yeah.
Admitting that I wasn't as strong physically, emotionally, or spiritually as I wanted to be, right? And admitting that I can't do everything. Because I'm the type of lady who, well, I used to be, hates to ask for help.
Yeah.
Now I call it delegating. Feels better.
Yeah.
But, I grew up with the old adage, if you want to get something done right, you do it yourself. And then you couple that with putting your value on yourself in equation to how much stress you're under and how busy you are. And then to say, okay, starting 2 weeks from now, I'm not going to be working this job. Suddenly I have 40, 50, 60 extra hours in my day, right? I have to focus on my health, which means I'm vulnerable. That was huge. That was totally scary to me.
Right.
And I had to admit to myself that I wasn't necessarily making the best choices. And what was really scary is, okay, admitting that was scary enough, but then what do I do going forward? Now, fortunately, my health directed a lot of what am I going to do forward. I had to focus on getting my health back. And as that started coming back, then I decided I'm going to start looking at where I had broken promises to myself.
Yeah.
And one of the promises I had broken to myself or didn't fulfill yet was finishing up the degree that I had started. When I left, I was a single mom, recently divorced, raising 4 children on my own. And I tried, but I couldn't continue to go to school and work to support my family. So I had to get a full-time job and just go to work. And the promise I made was I'll go back and finish that. Well, 15 years later, 16 years later, I'm looking at, okay, that's a promise I'm going to start keeping. So that's what was in my mind, the fear. And then, okay, what next? What else?
Yeah.
And as long as I focus, here's the cool thing, Rebecca, once you start focusing on the what else, and take your focus off of the fear, suddenly things that you can't see start showing up for you. Because when we're focused on our fear, all we can see is the stuff around our fear.
Yeah.
You can't be optimistic and fearful at the same time.
Right.
You can vacillate between the two, but you can't be in both.
Yep.
And I have found that one of my biggest, most empowering questions that I ever ask myself that gets me to this what's possible piece is, what am I wanting? What am I wanting? And if we stop the busyness and we step back from the stress and ask ourselves that on a daily basis, it's amazing what comes up for you.
Yeah, just getting still with really that question every day, I think is what people really do miss.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. So if I were to ask, so what would you say your fear was around this time? Is it that you weren't good enough? Or what would you say the fear is? Like if you had to say in one thing, like your fear during this time was this, what would it be?
That's an interesting question. Nobody's asked me that before.
I know it's not on my questionnaire, but I want to start asking people what it is.
That's a really
Like,
good
what is your
question.
fear?
Biggest fear. For me, to be honest, the biggest fear underneath all of that was that I wasn't worth being loved. Like no one would love me. that I didn't have value. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense with, the components of the abusive relationship, and then coupling that with, your health and leaving a successful job, and, still knowing that you had your roles that you had to maintain as a mom and a wife, and finding your new place with the new titles and the new things that you had to label yourself as, like an entrepreneur. I mean, that is scary in of itself. And knowing your worth is super important when you're an entrepreneur, because you're about to ask people for your worth when you're a coach and when you're teaching people these things. So that makes sense. Oh, and the other question I was going to ask too is, can you tell us more about, or me maybe, intrinsic? Tell me what that means.
Yes. So I am certified as an intrinsic coach. Yeah. And it's a style of coaching, and it's actually one of the first two. There was one coaching program that was the lead of all coaching programs, and the two owners split up, and this is one of those two that it split into. So it's very reputable. And the basis of intrinsic coaching is this: every one of us is complete, capable, and that we have the answers within us. In summary, you are your own best expert. As much as I know about you, I will never know you the way you know you. And that's why you are your own best expert. You are you through all of everything that you've experienced, through all your relationships, through all the roles you've done, through the way you interact, even your inner thinking. No one has access to that but you. And because of that, you know what your beliefs are, whether you're aware of them consciously or not. We can tap into them very easily. You know the answers to the questions you're asking. The problem is we're not taught how to get to them. There's three ways of thinking. There's systemic thinking, which thinks in systems and strategies. So this is the most common type of thinking we do when we want to fix a problem. So let's say we want to lose weight. We find a weight loss program and follow their system, right? Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The reason for that is because if the system or the strategy you're choosing isn't in alignment with what you believe is possible, on an intrinsic level, it will never work, because we have all these things that are forming what we believe is possible for us, our belief systems, our values, our experiences, right? So systemic thinking. Then there's extrinsic thinking. Think of this as thinking in roles, categories, titles, concepts. So if I say the word dog, a picture pops into your mind because you have an idea of what a dog is. You have a concept. But what you just thought of and what anyone else listening here thought of are probably different pictures of dogs.
Right.
So that's extrinsic thinking. What it means to be a successful entrepreneur, what it means to be a mom, what it means to be in a relationship, right? Those are roles and concepts. Now that's closer to what we truly believe. But even those are affected outside of us by societal rules and expectations, by the way you were raised, by the things you've been exposed to and experienced, by the media, by things we've taken on from outside of us, right? That kind of thinking is what's usually going on in our head. It's where the shoulds or shouldn'ts come from. It's where the rights and wrongs come from. And that kind of thinking can get us stuck too, because if you can't step outside of it, you can't find the solution you're looking for, because that's stuff that's already forward of mind, right? And if that worked for you, you'd have got unstuck or found the solution, right? Because it's already up there. And then there's intrinsic coaching, thinking, intrinsic thinking. And the intrinsic thinking, we've all experienced it, where you've had a gut feeling or where your heart leaps, right? These are phrases that we've used, where you can't explain it, but you just know something.
Yeah.
That's tapping into your intrinsic. And that is where all the answers you're searching for actually come from. It's not a thinking that comes in your head. It's an interesting sensation. It's awkward at first, but it's fun when you get the hang of it. It's kind of a bubbling up of thought that comes from your inner self. Is the best way I can explain it. Instead of actively thinking for the answer, you allow the answer to come up.
Okay, yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Well, that was a good learning experience. I didn't know any of that. Hopefully everyone else got something from that too. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So talking about your fear and how you switched directions and where you were mentally, right? So when you were breaking free from your fear during that time, how did relationships or friendships shift in your life? What did that look like for you?
That's a very insightful question. Yeah, because that's what happens, right? Nothing stays the same. When you change one part of your life, it kind of ripples out into other areas, right? Yeah. My relationship with my husband got stronger, in part because he was so supportive. He was willing to support me financially and emotionally, stepping away from my job, right? And stepping away from that income. Because my health and my well-being was more important to him than that. And that, of course, is going to help bind a relationship stronger. Yeah. I did lose some acquaintances, some so-called friends, because in part because I was not in their circle anymore. Yeah. And I'm referring more to those that were related to work. And what I discovered was the true friends that I had actually continue to stick with, and we still stay in touch. Family-wise, siblings and that kind of aspect, and parents, that was the same. Yeah. And children, it was better because at that point we had two still at home, and it allowed me to be here when they got home from school. It allowed me to the flexibility of scheduling. When I started my business, scheduling my work around my family life as opposed to the other way around. So that was really amazing. Now we're empty nesters. So it's a little different scenario. Our youngest just moved out. It'll be a year ago in August. So yeah.
Yeah, that is a whole new world now.
Completely different dynamic. And again, find myself saying, okay, how do I define myself?
Yeah. Isn't that funny how we definitely have seasons of life where, change is inevitable. That's how we grow and move to the next level of our life. So it's fun to hear, now you're going through that again already, which is super cool because it is just evolving in our lives. And the way that we think about it, it's so different now that you've had these life experiences and you've pieced together how you move through the fear. Like you said before, we move through it. We don't really, if you let it sit there, then you can't move forward. We have to overcome it and move with it and figure it out along the way, really.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and sometimes we actually have to embrace that fear.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's not so much about overcoming it and moving through it as first we have to embrace it and recognize it for what it is. And what I mean by that is sometimes the idea of the fear, again, it's a concept. We're in our extrinsic thinking. We have this idea of what it is, and we don't know how to see outside of it. So we just have to kind of embrace it, look at it, explore what parts of the fear are true, what parts of the fear are not true. And then once we're at that place, we can choose to move through it.
Yeah, and really figuring out what serves you and what doesn't. Because like you said, there was fear that really kept you safe, especially in your abusive relationship before. Mm-hmm. There was different fears that really kept you safe at that point. But if you're finding the fears that aren't serving you anymore, then that's when you have to acknowledge that it's not serving you and then moving forward. So it's a really good point. You have to kind of figure that out, sit with it for a minute, and figure out if it's something that needs to be moved through or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because fear's biggest purpose is to really keep us vigilant to what we can survive and what we can't. And the thing is, we're more capable of what we think we are capable of, right? That sounded a little redundant, but you get my point. There is so much more available to us when we allow ourselves to be who we are.
Yeah.
That we're stuck in the fears of who we think we should be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
And I find that often is what's keeping us stuck. We have these ideas, these beliefs, and to let them go or transform them can be very scary because we don't know what's on the other side of that. But I will also say that without fear, we'd never grow. Without change, we'd never become anything, right? So it's a necessary part of life.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I love to tell people, live fearlessly. The name you live fearlessly isn't about having no fear.
No.
It's about having the fear and still doing the things anyways, because we have to have that and acknowledge that to continue to expand and grow in our lives. So absolutely. So true. So what really compelled you to jump ship from the fear that was holding you back at that time? Was it your health or was it something more than that?
Well, my health was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
My abusive relationship was a wake-up call. We have all these, we have these moments of wake-up calls, and we kind of addressed that a little earlier, Rebecca, and that, it's those things that trigger us to go, whoa, kind of step back and look at what's going on. To break us out of the habitual way of living. And so I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. Repeat your question. I want to come back to that.
What compelled you to jump ship from your fear that was holding you back during the time?
Yeah. So what compelled me was, like I said, that the two things that really hit home for me was the abusive relationship and the adrenal fatigue. And I as I stated earlier, that's when I realized that it was the choices I was making. And this is profound. It wasn't the things that were happening to me. Those are just a consequence of the choices that I was making. And when that awareness came to me, suddenly it was like the lid just blew off. Like, I have the power to make a choice. No matter what's going on outside of me, I have the power to make a choice. And it's our choices that affect what's going on around us. It feels like they're happening to us because they're coming from outside us.
Yep.
But we make choices that allow that to come.
So true.
So what let me jump ship, so to speak, was the awareness that it was my choices. I took full responsibility for what was happening in my life, the part that I had affected, right? And it was only then that I could make a different choice, that I could face the fear of, will I survive leaving this relationship? That was real fear. Will I live through this, right? The fear of what will happen outside of this corporate career, right? Will I? And again, it's not will, it's what will. Because I am making new choices. So new choices will bring new results, right? New experiences. And that's when I also became aware, no matter what happens, I know that I can get through it. I know that I can move through it, because not moving through it is not an option.
Right.
And that's what let me jump ship, so to speak.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I actually made a post today about very similar to what we just talked about. So that's awesome. I love that so much. So 2 questions left. So what we've talked about a lot of advice that you've been saying, but is there anything specific that you would give for advice to the viewers about moving through the fear? And other than, really paying attention to it, is there any other tips or advice that you would give about fear and moving through it?
Got an hour or two?
No, but I definitely want to follow up and do this again.
What I would say is, whatever you're facing, if it's triggering fear in you, then it's important that you look at it. It's important that you take account of what are you truly afraid of. Because sometimes what we're afraid of isn't even real. It's just those ideas we have going on in our head, or the concepts that it's extrinsic thinking we're talking about. Sometimes the more scary something is, the bigger the payoff when you've gotten through it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's hard to say one thing, but my biggest thing I would say to any one person facing fear, get help. Whether it's the support of a friend or a confidant, a counselor or law enforcement or whatever it is that you're facing, right? Be open to receiving help and just really evaluate what choices are you making in this moment? What choices can you make in this moment that can help you through it? We're talking fear in general, and fear in general is a hard thing to kind of get a handle around, right? But depending on whatever that fear is, just first and foremost, you have to decide, what choices am I making that is bringing this forward? And what can I do differently?
Do you do something daily that helps you evaluate your choices currently?
Oh, yeah.
That you could give us a tip?
Yeah. Every time I'm faced with a decision, I will stop and ask myself, what am I truly wanting?
Okay.
That's my go-to question. I can't tell you how often that suddenly makes the answer very clear, suddenly makes the time less wasted and more productive, and really aligns myself with what's important to me. What am I wanting? It's very simple and extremely profound, because that's the thing. We're always making choices because there's something we want as an end result. The problem is we make the choices before we ask ourselves what we want. That's so why, going back to that dieting scenario, if you pick a strategy, strategies are great if they work.
Right.
But they won't necessarily work for you if they're not aligned with what you're truly wanting. So you ask the question first, and then you pick the path, or the strategy, or the system. We do it backwards. We're always like grabbing at strategies and systems and trying to figure out what we want.
Yeah, it's true. That's so true. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, and then the last fun question that I love to ask, because I'm a big dreamer and I love hearing what people are dreaming about. So where do you see yourself 5 years from today? I mean, you've got a big handle on, how you live your life fearlessly and can move through fear. So where do you see yourself 5 years from today?
Oh, visiting much more of the world than I've seen. So I love to travel, and I want to experience as many different countries and cultures that I can in my lifetime. So that's 5 years from now. I'm seeing myself more on stage. I love public speaking. I love inspiring and motivating and supporting others. And I love sharing stories. We all have these amazing stories that have insight for each of us. So I love doing that. But speaking more and traveling more. I do a lot of it already. I see more and more, always expanding. And destination retreats is something I'm starting. So I see those consistently being done for transformational travel with my clients. Yeah. And on a personal level, gosh, I don't know. I've got everything I want right now.
Right? You got the grandbabies coming in. You got the empty nest now.
Oh, wonderful man in my life.
Right?
With a beautiful home. Yeah. So just enjoying more of it. Making more friends. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So, Paula, tell us, where's the best place to connect with you?
That would be, check out my website, paulahoulihan.com. So that's PAULAHOULIHAN.com. And anything and everything you want to know or get connected is there, and also through social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was so insightful. I learned some new things, which is super fun. And I just love talking to you. I look forward to doing this again. I want to follow up with all of the people I've been talking to about their fears and see how it's presenting in the next year ahead too, because that's super fun. So thank you for your time and sharing your story with us. I totally appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. It's my pleasure to be here, and I've really enjoyed our conversation and love connecting with your peeps.
Thank you. Thank you. And anyone that's listening, anything that resonated with you about Paula's story or her insights about fear, moving through them, expanding on those things, please connect with Paula. She's amazing. And remember to love yourself and live fearlessly. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.